I love having an apartment upstairs and running the art gallery downstairs, so I can tootle up and down all day and meet the public in the art gallery.
It's Putin, Planet Putin. So, because you know, with the naked riding the horse, but he is a horse.
Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer-engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Jewish Museum of the American West, and Atheists United Studios. Hey, Joey, what would cosmic mythology and primordial folklore look like as an underground comic? Our guest today has answered that question.
We're honored to talk with Barbara Willy Mendes, a fine artist and underground comics pioneer whose new anthology, Queen of Cosmos Comix Trilogy, is published by Fantagraphics. Willy, welcome to Amusing Jews.
Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, in particular because people have been dwelling on the weighty parts of my book, like the Midrash and the Kabbalah, of which it is not about that. And on the surface, it's a very funny story. So I'm hoping that we can inject some humor and amusement into this interview.
Your artwork is unique and instantly recognizable. How did you get started in the arts?
Well, totally as a little kid. When I was 5 years old, I was in Montclair Museum Children's Art School, and then we moved to Brooklyn Museum Children's Art School. By the time I was an adolescent, I was drawing the nude at the Art Students League and learning composition and all the adult things in High School of Music and Art, School of Visual Arts, Hunter College Fine Art program, and then I tuned in, turned on, and dropped out. But there's a story of my style that goes like this. I'm 16 years old, I guess still in music and art. And of course, Art Forum was the Bible. I mean, if you ever grew up and got an Art Forum, that would be it. And so I'm reading Art Forum, and they have this article about the Tate Gallery in London is exhibiting toilet paper on the walls. That's the art. And I said to myself, these people are like, I am not following this. This is not something that I have to aspire to. I'm not going to try to be like the white male Western world without putting it into those words, perhaps. But I'm going to do what I like. I, Barbara Mendes, 16 years old girl. I liked Jean Cocteau. I liked French movies. And I liked color. And I liked plants. And I had some interesting dreams. Throw it all on the canvas and make it beautiful. And I began that. I just tacked a canvas on the wall and began throwing it all on the wall, making it beautiful and using color patterns. And this is how I developed my style. And I'm 78 years old now, and it's quite recognizable. And I've gotten good at it over those long years.
Yeah, you mentioned Cocteau and maybe some film work. Were there fine artists that influenced you as well?
Oh, gosh. Walt Disney, I would say, was the biggest artistic influence on me. And I'm not even going to talk. I'm not giving them my time of my interview to go through the list of famous male artists in my lifetime. Forget about it. Let's talk about me. There were no women role models, and the male role models had one big problem. They're males. I am not. So they've been talked about until anybody's blue in the face.
Is that maybe why you were looking at plants and other maybe natural inspirations, because they weren't gendered in that way?
So stale male white male gaze of Western art from the beginning is not the only way to see the world. Excuse me, but there are other things besides elements that arouse males. That's not the only subject of art. Excuse me, but I found others, not being a male myself. And also, and that didn't preclude extolling women. I extol women for their beauty, for their power, for their glory. But the titillating the males, I leave that to the 99% of the art in the world.
You were part of the underground comics movement of the 1970s. How did you get involved with that?
I got in through Kim Deitch he was a friend of my first husband, Rick Kunstler. And Trina Robbins was Kim Deitch's girlfriend. And in the beginning, that's how it was. And I got into a lot of boys' comic books before Trina gained her power in 1970. I also have a very rare page from Gothic Blimpworks, which Kim got me into this underground comic of the 1960s. So that was the earliest how I got into it. And then I showed you some of the boy books. And then along came Trina. This was really big. Ron Turner gave her $1,000 to make an all-woman comic book and get on the women's liberation trail. And this is the cover of it. It Ain't Me, Babe. And so I did the back cover. Trina and I were sharing a house with our guys, with Kim Deitch and Rick. So we actually shared a house on Edgar Place in San Francisco right before this. And we were both having babies. We were both pregnant. So Trina had her baby first, Casey, and I had my baby later. But this is really the iconic picture of us in that era. So I did the back cover of this book and the first story, Oma, which became later when I gave birth to my daughter and she was a girl, I named her Oma after this page. So we followed that up with the second all girl, all woman comic in the world, All Girl Thrills. And again, I did the back cover and I did a piece of art for the first story, which is so iconic. It's in the history of illustration on the same page with Robert Crumb, and it's Realm of Karma Comics.
What was your opinion of Robert Crumb and some of his artwork in those days, given your response to male artists?
On the one hand, Robert Crumb is a genius and he's the funniest guy. And he's the most genius artist of just drawing our times, our life and our times, and capturing the different types. And of all his drawing is amazing. So that's the truth of it. But what did he do? Of course, I abhor it with every fiber of my body. But my really favorite one was S. Clay Wilson, who makes Robert Crumb look like a pussycat with his subject matter. I mean, he just had the S. Clay Wilson had the worst subject matter ever, but his art was not only fantastic, it was also beautiful in its ugly subject matter, despite it. In a way that Crumb is not like gorgeous, beautiful. It's just fantastically genius-like.
Enjoying the show? Click like and subscribe. What led you to incorporate Jewish lore and iconography in your work?
Well, that's the famous story of how it all happened. It was 11/11/92. Picture this, I'm on Fairfax Boulevard, a Jewish street in Los Angeles that you may have heard of. And I'm painting a mural of a trefa restaurant called Tropical Garden. And a guy stops me. And he says, "Excuse me for stopping you. I want you to paint my synagogue." And I said, "I'm Jewish. I'll do it." So I go and it's a Sephardic synagogue, which I have Sephardic roots on half of it. I just knew that. And I painted the Garden of Eden and Noah's Ark in the courtyard of the Pinto Torah Center. Meantime, Gabrielle's friend Nathan courted me and I got a boyfriend who later became my second husband. Meantime, there was a movement in America, I don't know, around the world, called the Baal Tshuva movement, to take Jewish people, adults such as myself, who know they're Jewish but know absolutely nothing about Judaism, and teach them absolutely everything. So the Yeshiva of Los Angeles, known as YULA, they had a community adult program where 4 nights a week I would go and learn from the biggest rabbis, and the most inspiring rabbi taught me Hebrew, Dr. Yehuda Verdugo. I learned Hebrew from the most inspiring teacher who would say, "Class, this is a class like no other because Hebrew is the language of God." And he totally inspired us. And he'd say, "Class, this is very beautiful." So these are the things that brought me to Judaism. So how did I express it? Immediately, I put it into my art. So it began with these biblical murals. This is the Bereshit mural. So it starts with the days of creation. And then the outer border, I decided to make all the stories, which we'll see more in some of the other ones. When I sold it, it's in Florida, I created the Shemot mural. So this is, the boxes are bigger and it's everything that happens in the book of Exodus. And they're divided into boxes, which are the weekly Torah portion. Because in Queen of Cosmos Comics, for the first 2 chapters of each volume, I parody the Bible, the weekly Torah portions. So this is my 3rd biblical mural, the Vayikra mural, and it's every single verse in the book of Leviticus. Now, there are 859 verses in the book of Leviticus, and each one is a tiny picture. Well, it was around 2016 that I received a phone call from Dr. Robert Lovejoy, a professor at American University, who was editing the underground comic section of the History of Illustration. And he invited me to be in it. And which page do you want? First page of Realm of Karma Comics, which I always knew since I was 21 years old and made it, that it was a good page. So that validated me. I went back, I says, "Whoa, my comics were really good. I'm going to be in the history book." So then I got the idea, long about this time, I had been Orthodox Jewish already for 30 years. I left the second husband, but I continued in it. And I did those 3 biblical murals. And I'm Orthodox. I'm so frum, you couldn't believe it. 30 long years. And I finally really got tired of the patriarchy on the ground in Judaism, particularly Orthodox Judaism. However, they have all the mystic stuff. They have all the godly stuff. They have the priests that bless you every day. And that's not the blessing. I just made that up as a victory symbol. But they have a lot of holiness in Orthodoxy, which is absolutely missing possibly in other areas. But it's so patriarchal and the men are so arrogant. Oh, I couldn't take it anymore. That's when I made a painting, which led directly to my comic series, Queen of Cosmos Comics. And this is volume 1. And I really planned it as a one-off. I didn't plan it as a series, but it was a no-brainer to put the Judaism in there since I'm already drenched in it. It starts with creation and let us create a world. The second one starts with, there's in Hebrew, it's lech lecha, but the English translation is get up and go. And again, they're all humorous. They're funny. Get up and go. It shows wine, woman, and song. So you can punch that in. And then volume 3 begins, and I'm going to bring out the actual original artwork because, of course, the book isn't published yet. It'll be out in the trilogy. And this is the first page of volume 3. And here's a joke because I want it to be funny. It's the 5th weekly Torah portion after creation in the Torah, the Bible. And the Hebrew name of this Torah portion is Chaya Sarah. Chaya Sarah, it means the life of Sarah. Chaya, Chai, L'chaim, L'chaim, right? Everybody knows that Chai means life in Hebrew. We know from saying L'chaim, to life, L'chaim. So Chai means life. And the Hebrew meaning of Chaya Sarah is the life of Sarah. It goes on to say was 127 years. So I make a joke. I call it Chaya Sarah. So she's saying hi because I made the female character of Sarah Sora, but she's on hiya Sora. And then there's a bunch of other jokes. So with all my Bible parodies, the more you know about the Bible and certainly the weekly Torah portions, then you'll get a lot of the jokes. So I think that answers how I wove Judaism into my comics and my paintings and how it was just a natural progression since that's my life. Because one last thing, I've shown all Bible imagery, but going into the Orthodox community inspired me visually with the people and the rituals and even the holy meals, because I'm talking 3 times every Shabbos. We have holy meals, communal meals and everything. And it was just so aesthetic, so beautiful. And everything in the Sephardic world is beautiful. The Torah is draped in scarves and silver and gold. And I was very aesthetically taken with the on the ground, the same world that I had to leave behind because I found it too patriarchal, but I missed some great beauty and joy. And I will mention the singing, particularly the Sephardic singing. So I miss that dearly.
What can you tell us about your central character, Queen of Cosmos?
Well, I'm happy to tell you about the Queen of Cosmos because people come into my gallery that I run all the time, and I've said this a million times. It's like this. The one God, the God of the Bible, has no body. Like the poem that you may bring up says, it's a bodiless being. It has no body. It has no gender. It is neither male nor female. It is a giant non-bodied being. It's God. So we can't think about such a weighty concept. So we use metaphor. A metaphor is a word that means something else, but it reminds us of that something else. So it can kind of stand in for that something else. So therefore, people have said, God, our Father who are in heaven, Avinu Bashamayim. So it's a metaphor for God. And besides, in all up until the world, and I'm going to read you a poem later that I wrote today, men have ruled the world. And so it was natural to think that God would be a man and God would be our father. However, if you happen to be female, it's no sacrilege whatsoever, in my opinion, to use a female metaphor for God, particularly since it's clear in the Bible that we are in God's image. And therefore, I just made it up. And, you've heard of King of the Universe, Queen of Cosmos. It's just a total parody, but it's using a female metaphor for the one God. And she mixes in, but she's a woman, so she's different from the male God. The male God has male attributes. God is jealous. God is violent. God is this and that. And also, all the women that God picks in the Bible are beautiful. Leah is the only exception, and the only time wise women are called for is in the end of Tisha B'Av, when we're mourning the destruction. The woman God is different, and I find her funny, and she makes mistakes, and she's always arguing with the angels who surround. God is surrounded by angels, and they're kibitzing her, and she's arguing with them. So it's not that my book is about argument, it's that the queen isn't so self-assured and arrogant as the male god is. For example, the male god creates the world and then he says, and it's good. He doesn't even ask anybody, he just goes, and it's good. Whereas my female god says, is it good? Because that's what I would say to you if I show you a new picture. I'd say, is it good? Do you like it?
Yeah, George Carlin had a great shtick about how the God of the Bible is obviously male because of all the ways that he expresses himself and all the wars and the, retribution and all that stuff.
Yes, it's a valid concept that we both have in common. I mean, it's out there.
I saw it and enjoy it as a loving send-up. Do you kind of see yourself in the Queen of Cosmos also,
Only in that she's the only character that looks like me in a very, very, very idealized way. But with the tangled hair, I mean, that's what we do. We idolize, we idealize. I would call it an idealized version, but I never thought about me being it. I just had to make it look like me because what else are you going to make it look like?
Yeah, I was going to say strive for or aspire to, but then I thought maybe that's my maleness coming in. I don't know.
I just made it because it's to me it's if you look at women's art, which not enough people do in bulk, and especially on the internet, women's art, especially on TikTok, women's art all around the world. Women make symmetrical things. Women paint themselves. We start our vision from the inside, from inside of us, and it's like a mandala, and it radiates out. And the first thing it encounters is our physical appearance and how we look. But we see so much art is based on how we are and how we look and how we feel.
Queen of Cosmos Comix Trilogy not only retells stories from the Torah with a psychedelic feminist twist, but also vignettes from your own life's journey. Have these comics played a role in your self-discovery?
I really grappled with that question in advance because I don't know the answer. They're just all woven together, and me, my life, and my art are woven together. I think one answer I grabbed was from my day books, but I don't have to show you. It's just that in the beginning of my visual journals, I show what I did that day, what I did that day. Back to front, like Hebrew, it's my ideas and also the studies for my biblical murals and my other art, just my wild ideas, what I feel like, which is most of my pre-Judaic art was very wildly about how I felt. So to me, the two are just woven together. And in the comic, of course, as you know, I wove them together. So the Queen of Cosmos has to appear. My daughter, Kirby, my living daughter, is one of my role models and idols. And she said to me while I was making it, Mom, you got to keep the Queen of Cosmos in there, because that's your main character. So I wove the Queen of Cosmos through all the stories about my life. But I really felt like that. Like, how did we go under the bridge of the Brooklyn Bridge to meet this lady and smoke a joint? And she was the one who knew the healer. And P.S., my daughter didn't die in 1 year. She died in 33 years. So who but a lady God would have set that little meeting up? I'm just saying, to me, that's a divine thing. And divine things like that happen to me. I'm very mystical. I live my life in a mystic fashion. And mystical, amazing things happen to me all the time. That was one of them.
You have a page in the book that reads, I believe in feminine cosmic consciousness. Women can regain power in spiritual and worldly realms. Women are hardwired to be compassionate and seek solutions. Men shake the world into a frightening horrorscape instead of the bountiful earth we were given. Are you hopeful about a woman-led future?
I absolutely am. And the poem that you just read, which happens to be a TikTok rap that I did, it's a pin to the top of my TikTok page, Barbara Willy Mendes, sums it up. I mean, I think you answered the question before you asked it. I absolutely believe not only that women will rise, but that women will save the world by rising because of the contents of that poem. But here we are today, April 9th. I wrote a poem today to add to this answer to this question. Okay, it's short. I see women rising, but men still ruling with drooling gaze and unsafe ways. Just look around, that gaze is found. Those ways resound, opponents downed by men's rule. We bow to a fool. I see women rising, but men still ruling.
Well, I think part of what you're getting at too, maybe, is that the whole sort of persona of maleness can also change, right, to accommodate the rising women.
I forgot to add that part. I mean, I'm a straight person. I love men. And I love what makes them manly and testosterone. That's beautiful. That's what I want in a man. However, and those new men are all around. It's just that they don't rule the world yet. But those men are all around, and people like me, those are the only men that they know, because the other men don't remain known by me. But there's absolutely wonderful dudes around, and they are accommodating, because what are you, Simon Legree? You don't want to be a overlord. So then you accommodate the new way to look of things. But when my day, I'm old, I'm 78. When I was in my 20s and 30s, men were saying, you women's livers, you wanted this, you wanted that, like get back in the kitchen. So it's very new, these new males, that they're visible, and of course in TV shows and everything. Welcome. Thank you. Because in the Queen of Cosmos comics, it says the males will come in handy. They'll help everybody with their strength. And that's how it should be. Like, you guys are physically and the general stronger. So come and help me move this chair, and come and help take care of the house. Give a hand with the kids even, like lend a hand with this wonderful strength. But the whole way that they're hardwired to use it for harm, forget about it. I don't like that, because we have babies and they're so difficult to nurture from the teeniest point to like 2 years old. They could be dead 100 times if you didn't save their lives with your brilliant adult wisdom. They're so fragile. So to bring anybody up like that, just to slaughter them, is just beyond my ability to understand that impulse.
You have a very colorful art gallery on South Robertson Boulevard in Los Angeles. Could you tell us about that?
My landlord owns 2 buildings, and one is on the corner. I never dreamed in my wildest dreams of the storefront. I had a place a block to the north for 10 years, and the building was sold, and I was already friends with my landlord, Aubrey, and his wife, Melba, because we put on a yearly festival on my block for 20 years, and I knew them from that. So when I had to move, I rented the apartment next door to the gallery upstairs, which is still my large apartment and beautiful apartment, because I thought it would be my gallery, my studio, and my home. And then a miracle stepped in. It was Dee Dee Kirkwood with a job on the Toke, the play called Toke in Berkeley, and she needed posters. So I made 4 beautiful paintings for her. And she paid me enough to get into that art gallery. The guy had just mysteriously left after 13 years, and it was empty. That's how I got the Barbara Mendes gallery. And then I couldn't pay that rent. I ended up owing Aubrey 8, 10, 12, 14, $18,000. And I just got the hell out of there. It was just going up and up. And I was crying and painting. It's in the book. The story is in the book. And Carolyn came along and she bought tons of my big paintings and got me current, and I stayed. And that's how I got into it. Then we closed the gallery for a while, but it didn't get rented. And then we put on an art exhibit for the festival that year. And we don't know exactly how we got the idea, but we got the idea to open a gallery together, me and the landlords, so that they get the rental. It's a rental gallery, and people rent the 2 front rooms, and they pay good money, and they pay it to Aubrey and Melba. So they get some income for their property, and I get to maintain a gallery in the back room year round. And I make my living that way. People come in because they're attracted by the mural outside. My favorite people in the world are the ones that stop their car and pull over and come check out the mural. And if they find me, it's wonderful.
Don't you have your name on the street there as well?
Oh, thought you'd never ask. But it's also called Barbara Mendes Square, the corner on which the gallery and the mural are. It's Barbara Mendes Memorial Square, which is nice because it's like being at your own funeral. But it says, I have the copy of it in the house also, dedicated to a creator whose artistic integrity magnifies the excellence of the South Robertson community.
I just think it's hilarious that it's called the Memorial Square, because obviously you're not memorialized. You're not eligible for memorialization yet.
But I will be, and inevitably. And then I tell the young people, see, then you'll say that you knew me. But I'm also a Los Angeles cultural treasure. So that one I'm proud of. But nobody knows this stuff, but it's true. You want to hear how I got to be Memorial?
Yeah, please.
It was an enemy that got me that sign, not a friend. It wasn't everybody loved me and they got together to extol me. It wasn't like that at all. It was the day of the festival. Picture this. And it was the year that we had the art gallery exhibition, but it hadn't been a gallery before that. So there's this giant pink mammogram bus. It's like a Greyhound bus, only painted completely pink, and it's on. So it's like, so it's like on. And I wake up at 6 a.m. There it is. I throw on jeans and run outside. move the bus from the front of the gallery. And Terry, my arch enemy, comes down the block on a golf cart because the whole street is closed off to traffic. They're just building booths and everything. And I stood in front of that golf cart like Tiananmen Square, like this. Like, if you're going to go forward, you're going to run me over. You have to stop. So he stopped and I said, move the bus. And he said, no. So I said, well, Terry, I intend to oppose you politically. And I intend, when the officials arrive today, I'm going to tell them what you did. And he says, well, if you'd have said, please, I'd move the bus. So he moved the bus and the officials did come. And I remembered, I lifted my eyes and I saw the official's name. And I told the story and they says, on Monday, we're going to deal with this. So sure enough, Liz Carlin was a wonderful woman who was the deputy to Herb Wesson, the head of the city council. And she asked me if the mural was legal. And I said it wasn't. So she just forwarded me from Cultural Affairs the application for a legal mural. And it was easy because it's a vintage mural. It had been there a few years already. And it became legal. And then I got a call from Terry, my arch enemy. Evidently, they had told him merely to apologize to me, but he didn't want to do that. So he called me up and he said, do you want it to be Barbara Mendes Square? And I said, yes. And that did make me not oppose him so heavily for a year. I was waiting for my square. And then when they put the sign on, it was jackhammers. It was a little sign before the one way high up. And I'm like, I love those jackhammers because I knew they were putting up my sign, but it's covered with a veil. As you know, when they're going to unveil a sign like that, it had a film of yellow on it. So then they had a few minor dignitaries at the unveiling at the festival, and they peeled back the yellow film, and there it is, Barbara Mendes Memorial Square. So, but there's one more funny story. There's an avant-garde dancer named Rachel Rosenthal, and she has a studio 1 block to the south of me. Maybe you've heard of her. She was quite famous, but unfortunately she's passed away since then. But she has a sign across the street from her place that says Rachel Rosenthal, Los Angeles living cultural treasure. But she's passed away. So my sign says Barbara Mendes Memorial Square, but I'm still alive. So who would you rather be? It's okay. Everything that happens to me, it's like, it's okay because I'm just like living this life.
That all sounds like a Seinfeld episode or something, you know?
A lot of my life is like that. Thanks for letting me share some of these funny stories.
Thank you so much, Willy, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun to meet you all.
And to our audience, now back to your regularly scheduled lives.
Amusing Jews is here to amuse you. If you like being amused, go ahead and click like and subscribe.